3 times I called their name. 3 times I died. I've spoken my first word 3 times. The first time I said mama. My billionaire father took it as a public humiliation and kicked my crib across the room. I died. The second time, I was smarter. I said Dada. My mother shattered. That very night, she dragged my father into their room to try again for a new baby. She never looked at me again. My fever spiked to 104. I died in my cradle. The third time, I picked grandmother. Her face turned to ice. A child who ignores her own parents is unnatural. She cannot stay. I was shipped off to a specialized facility. I died there too. This is my 4th life. It's my first birthday gala. Hundreds of New York's wealthiest are watching. My father is breathing into my left ear. Say Dada, don't humiliate me. My mother is squeezing my right hand, eyes wet. 9 months I carried you. Don't you dare. My grandmother sits at the head table, cold as a blade. 3 lifetimes of death flash before my eyes. I take a shaky breath and open my mouth. 1. Seeing me remain stubbornly silent, my mother, Victoria, gently pinched my cheek. I went through 36 hours of grueling labor, darling, and I haven't slept a full night since you were born. You're going to say mama first, aren't you? Her smile was soft, radiating the kind of manicured maternal warmth that belongs on a magazine cover. But looking into her eyes, terror rippled through my tiny chest. I remembered my first life all too clearly. Back then, I'd looked at her tired eyes, felt that primal infant pull toward the woman who carried me, and chirped, mama, without a second thought. Who could have guessed that a single word would trigger my father's insatiable, competitive ego? To him, my choice was a public humiliation, a sign that he had lost. The memory of his face, veins bulging as he kicked my crib, made me instinctively pull my head back into my shoulders. No, I had fought too hard to get back into this tax bracket. I couldn't afford to offend my billionaire father. But my father, Thomas, was also waiting, leaning over the railing with an expectant grin. Seeing the sheer hesitation on my face, he chuckled. Look at that clever little expression. She's actually weighing her options. She's thinking, Dada bought me a custom yacht and a brownstone in the West Village before I could even crawl. I'd better play my cards right. She's definitely going to say Dada first. I forced a toothless, awkward grin, screaming internally. Oh, if only he knew. In my second life, I had figured he was my ultimate meal ticket. If I wanted to inherit the Bradford billions, I had to stroke his ego. So I ignored my mother and happily cooed Dada. He was ecstatic. He literally called his broker to buy me a yacht on the spot. But my mother's heart shattered. That very night, she dragged him into their dressing room, declaring they needed to try again for a baby who would actually love her. I thought she was just being dramatic. But from that day on, I became a ghost in my own home. She poured all her energy into IVF treatments, completely freezing me out. She didn't even notice when my temperature spiked to a lethal 104. Those 2 brutal demises taught me a cold, hard truth. Choosing either parent was a death sentence. Seeing my expression wobble between a smile and a grimace, grandmother Emily let out a dry, patrician laugh. Who says Charlotte will choose either of you? What if her very first word is Nana? She lifted me from the crib, cradling me with an air of absolute authority. Listen to me, little one. You say Nana first, and I'll rewrite the family trust tomorrow. You will be the sole heir to the Bradford empire. The temptation was astronomical, and a cold sweat broke out across my back. 2. In my third life, I had fallen for that exact trap. I had assumed her fondness was genuine, that securing the matriarch's favor was the ultimate shield. But when I squeaked out Nana, my parents didn't even have time to react before Emily's face hardened. A child should love her parents above all else, she had declared coldly to the room. To ignore them and fawning over an old woman, it's unnatural. She is far too calculating, too opportunistic. That kind of greed can't be nurtured. We should quietly send her away before she becomes a liability. In the Bradford family, when grandmother Emily suggested sending someone away, it was as good as done. The sheer injustice of it, mixed with the terror of losing everything, had literally suffocated me right there. Recalling those 3 miserable, absurd deaths, I made a firm decision. I was going to play dumb. I would play the mute, keep my mouth shut, offend absolutely no one, and buy myself some time. Once this immediate crisis passed, I could figure out a long-term strategy. So I let out a loud, bubbly baby giggle and reached my hands high into the air. My parents leaned in close, their eyes wide. What is she doing? I timed it perfectly. The moment my tiny hands reached their peak, I grabbed. Left hand wrapped around my father's thumb, right hand clamped onto my mother's index finger. Both of them instantly lit up, their rivalries melting into sheer delight. Oh, look at our clever girl. She's barely a year old and she already knows how to keep the peace. But I wasn't done. To make sure my bases were fully covered, I tilted my head back and sweetly nudged my forehead against grandmother Emily's chin. The 3 of them erupted into laughter, passing me around like a prized trophy. For the moment, the dreaded question of Dada or Mama was successfully shelved. I had survived the fatal trap of my past lives. I thought I could finally catch my breath. But that very night, the peace shattered. My bedroom door creaked open, and my father slipped quietly to the side of my crib. Hey there, Charlotte, he whispered, holding up his phone with an eager, recording grin. Just give Dada one little word. Just a quick Dada so I can show the guys at the club, okay? He leaned over, shining the screen light in my eyes. All my partner's kids said Mama first. If you say Dada first, I'll have bragging rights for the next 10 years. Besides, I already told the board you're a daddy's girl. Don't make me look like a fool, sweetheart. I stared at him, my eyelids twitching. So that was why he had lost his mind in my first life. It wasn't about love. It was about his fragile billionaire ego at the country club. I let out a silent, weary sigh. The man had a net worth of $50 billion, and he was losing sleep over a toddler's vocabulary. But then I shook myself. If solving this petty insecurity was the key to spending the rest of my life lounging on a private island, I had to pull myself together. I stared up at him, my brain working at warp speed. Think. How do I make him happy without making mom want to replace me? me. I set up a $50 million trust for you the day you were born, Charlotte. I bought you a penthouse, a fleet of strollers, and I'm transferring shares to your name for your first birthday. I do all of this, and you won't even say Dada for me? Seeing the dangerous shade of disappointment creeping onto his face, my survival instincts kicked in. I scrambled around my crib, grabbed the heavy gold Cartier bracelet my mother had left on my dresser, and shoved it into his hand. Before he could process that, I piled my favorite stuffed bear, my teething rings, and my custom rattle into his arms, babbling frantically in baby talk. My father stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, staring at the pile in his hands. Finally, a slow, ecstatic realization washed over him. Are you giving me your favorite things, Charlotte? My cheeks flushed red as I nodded vigorously. He looked like he had just won the lottery. You're barely a year old and you're already showing gratitude? You're giving your own father gifts? He scooped me up, kissing my cheeks repeatedly, before frantically snapping selfies. Look at this. My daughter is giving me presents. Take that, you guys. He spent the next hour bragging in his group chats, ordering 10 more designer toys for me on his phone, before finally slipping out of the room. I collapsed back onto my mattress, exhaling a sigh of relief, but the door clicked open again. My mother walked in, her face clouded with quiet resentment. Charlotte, how could you do that to me? My breath hitched in my throat. That look of deep, stinging disappointment on her face was identical to the one from my second life. Your father might have the money, but I gave you life, she whispered, her voice trembling as she sat on the edge of the crib. I went through body-altering physical changes for you. I tore, I bled, I lost sleep to nurse you, and you give him gifts while I get nothing? She pulled me into her arms, pouring out her grievances. But I wasn't really listening to the words anymore. I was analyzing the situation. Her tone wasn't as icy as it had been in my second life. She wasn't planning to replace me yet. She was just deeply hurt, reacting like a child who had been left out of a game. There was still room to fix this. I wiggled out of her embrace and crawled as fast as my chubby limbs could carry me toward the nightstand. I knew that in the bottom drawer, my parents kept the deed to my custom-built nursery mansion in the Hamptons and the spare keys to the family's armored Rolls-Royce. I tugged at the drawer with all my might, grunting with exertion. Seeing me struggle, my mother wiped a stray tear and opened it for me. Charlotte, what are you looking for? Mommy can help. Before she could finish, I grabbed the heavy leather-bound deed and dropped it right onto her lap. While she stared at it in shock, I reached back in, grabbed the heavy silver Rolls-Royce keys, and plonked them into her palm. Just like with my father, I didn't say a single word. I simply looked up at her with the most innocent, adoring, baby-eyed smile I could muster, babbling happily. My mother looked from the keys to the deed, her eyes suddenly welling with tears. Oh my God, Charlotte, are you giving me your mansion and the Rolls? You're giving away your most expensive assets without a second thought. You really are mommy's little angel, aren't you? I thought to myself. I've already lived 3 lives. I'll make this family go crazy for me. Now just sit back and watch the show.